Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Resource Management for Effective Change, with Matt Willey, the EPM Live Product Manager, and myself, Andy Jordan. I'm the President of Repenting Consulting, and I'll be one of the presenters and also the moderator for today's session. Just before we get started, just a few sort of brief admin things for you. First off, we are recording this session, so you will be sent a link after the event, so if you can't attend live, you'll be able to catch up on anything, and if your colleagues want to listen to it, they'll be able to do that. We'll also be sending out the copies of the slides, so you'll have all of that information to hand as well. The sound for this session is either through the computers or through phone lines, so if you're having problems with one of the options, please feel free to switch across to the other one. And I think that's about it, so let me get started and tell you what we're going to talk about today. First off, a little bit of background information on why we've got to this point. Then there's going to be some information on these sort of categories of resource management. I'm going to explain why I think each of these is important for us. Matt, who I'll introduce later on, is then going to do a demonstration. And we're going to wrap up just by giving you all a thank you and giving everyone contact information, as well as some information on PDU that goes along with this webinar. In fact, Category A and a Category C PDU. So we'll get to that at the end of the demonstration as well. So let me give you a little bit of background as to why this resource management in a change environment is important. First off, we need to recognize that project portfolios are not stable. When we approve a project portfolio at the start of the year, we know that things are going to change. The projects that we execute on won't always follow along in line with the plan. There'll be some that are ahead of plan, there'll be some that are behind plan. We know what happens with projects in the real world, that's inevitable. We also have to recognize that things are going to change within the organization. What gets approved as a really important project on day one may not be important by the time we start quarter four. And we have to be able to respond to that. We have to be able to adjust to the changing priorities of the organization. There's no point in us delivering a project that was important 12 months ago if it's not important anymore. We also have to recognize that when those changes do happen, we have to be able to incorporate them into the portfolio quickly and effectively. If we're having change, if we're experiencing a lot of change, then inevitably that's going to result in some inefficiency and some lost productivity. People have to switch from one priority to the next, and we need to minimize that inefficiency, we need to minimize that productivity loss, because otherwise it influences the entire portfolio, and we suffer on our ability to deliver goals and objectives. Until that new state is in place, the entire portfolio execution is being compromised. And finally here, as background pieces, we have to recognize that the resources, the people, have the biggest impact on change management. Those are the people who have the biggest impact on the changes themselves. They're also the people who are impacted the most by it. And the faster that they're able to adapt and the better their ability to embrace the changes that are happening, the more likely we are to be able to deliver a successful portfolio. How do we do all of that? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about next. So, for me, the foundation of everything is at that planning stage. Before ever the portfolio starts, when we're actually sitting down and figuring out which projects can we actually invest in, where can we put our dollars, where can we put our people to generate the return that we need to do an element of portfolio modeling there. We need to understand how likely are we to deliver success. It's all very well to approve a portfolio of projects that will deliver 100% of the goals and objectives, but if we don't have the people to do it, if the risks involved are way too high, that's not realistic. That's simply deferring change further down the road, and it's going to cause us problems. So let's deal with it up front. Let's consider capacity and capability. Let's understand what it is that we're actually dealing with so that we can look at whether we've got the right resources and whether those resources have the right skills. If we don't have that, then we need to look at our forecast and say, when do we need those skills to come on board? When do we need more people available? Because we need to be able to plan for that up front. We can't hire people on a Friday and have them available on a Monday. We have to recognize that it takes time to bring people on board. If we have to upskill existing resources, that potentially takes even longer. We have to make sure that they're given the training, they're given the opportunity to develop. All of that takes time. All of that factors into that ultimate final piece of planning there, the portfolio selection. The projects that we approve to be part of the portfolio need to be done so considering all of those resource needs so that we've got the best chance of delivering the portfolio without having to go through substantial change. Of course, planning is only the first part. Then we actually get into execution and we have to deal with a resource-focused management. That resource focus has to be proactive. What I mean by that is we have to be looking forward. We can't be looking in the rearview mirror. We can't be managing by what's happened. We have to look at ways that we can identify problems up front. We have to look for early warning signs of potential problems so that we can move resources around, we can implement our changes in such a way that we're ahead of the challenge, not behind the challenge. It's much easier to try and deal with, I don't know, a roadblock that's ahead of you. If you hear about traffic problems up ahead, take an alternate route. Reroute yourself to avoid those problems. Don't wait till you're stuck in the traffic and then figure out how to tell people you're going to be late for your meetings. We have to make sure that all of our management approach is resource-centric. Resources have the biggest impact. Resources are the most impacted. So we have to make sure that all of those management decisions that we take consider the impact on our resources. How can we minimize the disruption? How can we maximize the chances of our people to succeed in the work that we're asking them to do? And finally, we have to be strategic. What's important in a portfolio is the delivery of the business benefits. Nobody cares about delivering on time, on budget, and on scope if we fail to meet the business needs. They only become relevant when it comes to those business needs themselves. So we have to make sure that our resource management focuses on that, and we position our resources to deliver those benefits, not just on the scope, the budget, and schedule. If we can do all that, then we stand a pretty good chance of delivering overall success. We also have to recognize when we're having resource problems. This is all part of that proactivity, recognizing the symptoms up front and dealing with them before they become real problems. Most of the time when we're dealing with people, we become reactive. We do that rear view mirror management. We're moving people around in the portfolio to solve existing problems, not to try and prevent problems from occurring. We need to be able to switch that around. We need to be able to say, I think that there's problems ahead here. There seem to be some early indications that we don't have the right people, we don't have enough people, that things are falling behind, and then we move people to deal with that. If we see some indications that we need to change the priorities of our portfolio, then we need to consider how can we respond to those challenges, how can we move people around to embrace those opportunities, not wait until things are right on top of us and then try and deal with it in a panic. We have to recognize that change will create a loss of productivity. That's inevitable, and it's not necessarily an inherently bad thing. We still need to do those changes, but we need to make sure that we minimize the amount of time that resources are confused around what their priorities are. If you've got an organization where a lot of your project execution team members are unclear on what their number one priority should be, that's a pretty good indication that you've got some problems with your resource management. Similarly, if it takes a long time for assignments to be moved around, if it takes a while for somebody to be moved from one project to the next, if they've got 2 or 3 weeks of downtime or confused time, that's another indication that you're not doing a good job of proactive resource management. And of course, if the projects themselves are suffering slowdowns, if we're going through change and finding that a lot of our projects are being delayed as a result, that's a pretty good indication that we're having problems. We also have to recognize that sometimes when we implement change, it can cause mistakes in our resource management. If we're not got a clear understanding of what is an important change to us, what the strategic direction is, how we're going to respond to those changes in our portfolio, then we could end up with people with unclear assignments or people with the wrong assignments, and we have to move people around. I've seen a number of organizations that they see a change is necessary, they react very quickly, they'll move somebody across to it, and then 3 weeks later they have to move other people in because they put the wrong people there, and then the people that we've added have to be taken off and put somewhere else. It's just a mess, and it's not a good way of managing our organization. This is a pretty simple slide, but I think it really demonstrates how organizations can stay proactive. The first piece there, make sure that we plan well. Those are the pyramid slides that I showed you. Make sure that our planning is in place to make sure that our resource management is designed to deliver the organizational benefits. Then we need to manage those resources against that plan. As the plan changes, as actual performance varies from the plan, as the priorities of the organization shift and evolve, we need to manage those changes, and that means we have to be prepared to adapt as our individual resource needs change. We have to create an environment where people expect to have to be agile with a small a, move around and adapt to a changing environment. If that's in place in our project teams, if they recognize that they may be asked to do something different, then we're much better off, we're much better able to actually deliver success. We need to make sure that we've engaged the team. We have to make sure that our people at the front lines of project execution are part of this process. If they feel like the process is being done to them as opposed to them being part of it, then they're not going to be as engaged, they're not going to be as positive about the experience. So that means we have to decrease the number of surprise reassignments that we have. We shouldn't have a situation where somebody comes in on Monday and suddenly finds out you're not working on that project anymore, you're working on this project. They should be already aware that those changes are potentially going to happen. They understand what their impact is. They've offered some contributions as to how that can be implemented in a way that minimizes the disruption. We have to get rid of the concept of secret changes. I can't tell you how many organizations that I've been part of where there's all these rumors about things that are coming up, changes that might happen, and there's a lot of talk in the project execution teams, but no one really knows what's going on. And then when an announcement is made, well, it's almost like there's relief because at least now we know what's going on, but all that rumor ahead of time has resulted in lost productivity. People just don't feel as if they're motivated, they don't feel engaged, they're worried about their jobs. We have to get rid of that. We also have to get rid of those snap decisions, the knee-jerk reactions. We've got a problem here. Oh my God, we can't live with that. Let's move 12 people into this project. Let's move people away from that. Let's delay something else in order to deal with this problem. You see it all the time. It's short-term management, that next bullet point there. It's all about managing to the current crisis as opposed to maintaining that strategic view and recognizing that it's sometimes better to make the right decision than a quick decision. There's no point in making a quick decision to respond to a crisis if it means that we have to adjust other things further down the road or if we have to reverse that decision. What do we have to increase? Well, simple. Communication. We have to make sure that all of our project team members are aware of what's going on. They have to understand the purpose behind the projects that are going on. If you're working on a project and you don't understand how that project contributes to the organizational goals and objectives, you're not going to feel motivated. You're not going to be part of the solution. You're just going to think, I'm just doing this work for no real reason. No one appreciates what's going on. That doesn't work. We also need to make sure that we're not just communicating to our employees, but we're listening to our employees. We're getting that employee input. We're getting their thoughts on how we can implement changes in a way that minimizes disruption, how we can accommodate a delay in a project, how we can deal with additional resources being moved around. What is it that we can do that minimizes the disruption? Our team members, the people who are working on tasks at the front line, they're the people who can best tell us how to deal with this kind of change. We also need to consider the what-if planning. We don't just make a decision and implement it. We consider alternatives. We could do this, we could do that. What are the pros of approach 1? What are the pros of approach 2? What are the cons of both approaches? How are we actually going to do this? How can we consider ways that will minimize the disruption? What are the different benefits and costs of each approach, and how do we manage those? Our team members can help us with that, but we have to engage them. And then we also have to do a better job with our resource forecasting. How long do we really think this is going to take? Obviously, we need to make sure that those numbers are as accurate as we can make them, but the people at the front line know better than we do. So involve them in the forecasting, involve them in our planning. It'll go a lot smoother for everybody. We need to do a combination of strategic and tactical. We have to manage both sides of this because otherwise we're not going to have a full, complete resource management strategy, and when we implement change, we're going to run into problems. First off, plan for change from the start. It's going to happen. You're not going to deliver all of the projects that you approve on day one. That's okay. Recognize that change is going to happen. Be prepared to respond to it. Make sure that the changes that you do implement are goals-driven. It's about achieving the organizational goals and objectives. And if we have to change the project mix in order to do that, that's exactly what we should be doing. Plan for capacity and capability planning. I mentioned that briefly earlier on. Do we have enough resources? Do they have the right skills? If not, plan for when we need the people. Get the right people in the right place at the right time with the right skills. That ties into the concept of needs-based recruitment planning. If we know that we're going to start a project in Q3 that needs a skill set that we don't have enough of in the organization, we need to back that up to sometime towards the beginning of Q2 to start recruiting those people, because it's going to take a while to find qualified candidates, it's going to take a while to go through the hiring process and then the onboarding process, and it's going to take a while for those people to actually get up to speed with our organization and be able to contribute. Finally, we need to consider integrated resource management. That means not only end-to-end from our project standpoint, thinking about resource management right up front in our planning and thinking about it all the way through project execution. But it also means integrating our resource management across the organization, not just on projects, but also on operations and on support. It's one set of resources, and we need to appropriately apply them across the entire enterprise. At a tactical level, we need active and proactive project resource management. We need to make sure that all of our resources are being actively managed throughout project execution, and that's a role for our project managers. And we have to make sure that it's looking forward, not looking backwards. It's looking to prevent problems, not trying to deal with the problems after they've occurred. Communication of the why, that goes back to what I said a little while ago about the purpose. Why are we asking people to do this work? If they understand that, they're a lot more engaged, they're a lot more productive. We have to make sure that we have accurate and complete resource tracking. How much time are people really spending on this? Not just on the projects. Again, operations and support needs to do this as well. We need to get that full picture. And then we need to do objective impact assessments. We have to look at what is happening if we do this change and really understand what's going on. None of these project managers go, sure, we can handle that change, it's no big deal, or on the other side, oh no, we can't handle that change, it's going to be huge, it's going to delay us by months, it's going to cost $1 million more. We have to be objective. We have to look at a change and say, okay, what does this do to us? How can we incorporate it? What has to give? How does the schedule change? How does the budget change? What has to happen for this to work? Finally, we have to look at ways that we can deliver quick and effective improvements. We can't live with the status quo until we can make the world perfect. We have to look at incremental benefits, and every single one of those will help. Plan for change up front. The portfolio will change. Don't spend all of the budget right up front. If you've got a $100 million portfolio for the year, well, 25 million of that, maybe 30 million of that, isn't going to start until Q4. So why assign it right now? By all means, put it aside as part of the portfolio, but don't actually assign it to a specific project. Keep it in reserve in case you need to make adjustments throughout the portfolio. That's perfectly fine. You're not going to do any work up front anyway, so keep the options open. Keep the flexibility in place. Eliminate our single points of failure. Recognize where we have experts that if we lose that person, we're in severe trouble, and then look to hire backups or look to put some kind of contingency plan in place to eliminate that point of failure. We need to be able to understand the impacts of that change. This comes back to capacity and capability. It also comes back to our ability to adjust. How quickly can we change, and how effective is that change? Can we incorporate change very quickly, but only with severe disruption? That's no good. If we do it slowly and minimize the disruption, that's no good either. We have to be able to get that right combination of speed and effectiveness. And we have to consider the human and the work impact. We always think about what does this do to our project plan when we implement a change. We don't necessarily think about what this does to our people. Resources are not just a line on a Gantt chart or a line in a budget. These are real people. They have real impacts. If we ask them to keep changing between priorities, they're going to become demoralized. They're going to lose productivity. They're going to lose motivation. That's natural. We have to understand it. We have to treat them as humans. We have to manage them as people, not just as resources. And finally here, we have to engage all areas into the business. We have to be prepared to recognize that resource management has to be integrated end-to-end and across the entire enterprise. We have to also recognize that the strategic decisions we make have frontline impacts. If we make a decision to implement a change, that's not just a change in the plan on paper. That's a whole bunch of new work that has to happen by the people at the front line. It's a whole bunch of people who are going to be doing something different next week than they were doing this week. That's okay, but understand the impact. And then finally there, the success has to result in, or has to happen as a result of all partners aligning. Everybody has to be on the same page. We can't have people who try and do things differently because they think that's better. We have to have the same strategy across the entire enterprise. All right, so let me introduce Matt to you, and he's going to take us through the demonstration. Matt Willey is a product manager for Upland Software's cloud-based project management and collaboration platform, EPM Live. He has managed, implemented, supported, and designed EPM Live offerings since joining the company in 2010. Matt also manages the EPM Live app marketplace, which has included designing and creating most of EPM Live product apps. If you have a question about EPM Live, then most likely Matt will have the answer. So Matt, thank you so much for your time, and over to you.
Hello everyone, my name is Matthew Willey and I'm a product manager for EPM Live. And I'm here in the EPM Live demo site so that we can walk through some use cases today of resource management and the different tools that EPM Live helps to help you solve the challenges of resource management. We'll be looking at the resource capacity and demand planning part of the system, as well as when you're actually executing on work and projects to be able to see what people are working on, make adjustments, make sure that people have enough work but not too much work so that everybody can be efficient and we can utilize our resources as efficiently as possible. As we're going through the demo, I'll be moving through multiple different roles. We'll start out as more of a project manager, and then at some point we'll switch over to a resource manager. So you can see how if you have project managers and resource managers, how they can negotiate back and forth, and both people can do their job to make sure that everyone gets the resources that they need to get the work done that they need to get done and make your company ultimately efficient and successful. So I'm here within the EPM Live demo site. At the home page, I see my social stream here of everything that's going on. People can comment and communicate on things like resource management as well as other things. I see a brief view of my work here, so I can see I have a few different items that are in progress, some that are not started, etc. And I have some documents that I've uploaded within the system that I have quick access to here on my home page. But most of the work is really done at the project level. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and navigate to projects, and we'll just create a new project and go through the life cycle of a project to see how you can request resources, how you can then view the demand of resources in the future, see if you're going to need to hire more resources, etc. And then as you're actually executing, be able to make those adjustments and really manage your resources and make sure everyone's doing what they need to be doing and no one's sitting around with nothing to do. So let's go ahead and create a new project here. I'll go ahead and create my project. Let's see here. We can call this project Resource Management Test. I can associate it to a particular portfolio. And there's lots of other metadata here, the project manager, start dates, finish dates, benefits, descriptions, etc. I don't need to fill any of that in right now since this is just a proposed project that I'm putting into the system and that's not required. I'll go ahead and just hit save and we'll now have created a new proposed project within the system. So once I have that project within the system, I can now start to build all of the plans around it. So I can build my resource plan, I can build my budget, I can build my project schedule, and depending on what you're trying to get out of the system, you may do one or multiple of those things. What we're going to do today is the basic use case. So the very first thing I might do when I create a new project is I need to get an idea of how many resources that I'm going to need for this project, right? Is it a 2-resource project for a month? Is it a 20-resource project for 10 months? To start getting a scope of it. So there's really 2 questions. Question number 1 is how much resources do I think I'm going to need? And then question number 2 is, do we have the resources to do that? So there's a tool called the Resource Planner, which is going to help me to do that. And now I'm not building a detailed project schedule yet. I'm just building a high-level resource plan so I can start to get an idea of my resource load without having to go build that detailed schedule. It might take me weeks to build, and we might not even be doing this project if it gets if it doesn't get approved or if it gets delayed or whatever it might be. So later on, I'll actually build my detailed project schedule, but first I can start with my high-level resource plan to answer those 2 questions that we mentioned. So I'm here in the Resource Planner for this particular new project. In the top area here, I can see my particular project, and there's months across the top here. And those are my periods. I'm planning monthly. You could plan weekly if you wanted to be more detailed. It just depends on the level of detail you want to get to. For now, I'm just going to do it monthly. Now, you can also plan in hours, FTEs, or FTE percents. I personally like to plan in FTEs. It's just quicker, simpler, easier. You say, I need 2 developers, I need 1 project manager. Just makes it simpler and quicker to plan. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. In the bottom here, I can see all of the resources in the resource pool that are available to me. And then it shows me their remaining availability in the right area here. I can see if it's red that they're over allocated, so that I should probably stay away from them in those particular months. But as I'm planning, I can use this information to help make better choices. But let's take a look how this can work. Maybe I don't quite know who's going to be working on my project. Maybe it's up to a resource manager to figure that out. That's fine. You can always start with generic resources. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll switch my view here just to show the generic resources. Generic resources meaning not named resources, but generic developer, project manager, etc. So let's say for this particular project, I need 2 developers and 1 project manager. All I do is I can drag and drop my developer up here onto my project, and I'll also drag and drop the project manager up onto my project. Now, how long do I need them for, and how much effort, how many of them do I think I need? Well, let's say for this particular project, it's a smaller project. Let's say I only need about 2 developers. So I can type in my 2 here, and I can type that all the way across. Maybe in May, I only need 1, whatever it might be. I can continue to type that in. Or there's a nice tool here called allocate values, which I can open up, and I can just put in 2 here. And I'm going to copy that 2 all the way across for the life of the project. Instead of having to type it in a bunch of times, I can do that, and it'll fill it all out for me. So it just makes it a lot easier and quicker to get my data into the system. Let's say I only need 1 full-time project manager, 1 FTE. I will hit allocate values, and I'll copy that all the way across here. And that's it. My resource plan can be as simple as that. I've now answered the first question of how many resources do I think I'm going to need for this particular project. So we can start to get an idea of the scope of the project and how much it's going to cost from a resourcing perspective, etc. The next step, though, and it could be the project manager doing this, or it could be a resource manager doing this. The next step is finding actual named resources to do this. And once we get to that level, we can start to see, do we actually have enough resources to do this project in this period of time? And there's another tool which we'll look at next, which is a resource analyzer that'll help us to make those decisions better. But what I can do is I can select my developer here, and there's a button here called Match. I'll hit my Match button. It goes out into the resource pool, and it looks at all of the resources that are available, and based on their department and role, if that matches, and the amount of availability that they have, it's going to give them a % match over here on the left. So the people that show up at the top are more available, and they're the correct department and role, so I can use them to fulfill this resource request. Now, you may want to also add in skill sets and other types of data, which all can be added in here into this view so that you can better make your choice. Maybe I need a specific type of developer, an HTML developer or Java developer, or whatever it might be. I could add that information here and start using that to make my choices as well. But just keeping it simple here, I'll go ahead and grab Adam Barr. He's available, and I can drag and drop him onto my developer row. And when I do that, it asks me what I want to do. It realizes what I'm trying to do, and it gives me a few options. So it says I can either fulfill or replace. If I hit replace, then it'll just remove that developer, and it'll replace it with Adam Barr. The problem with that is I have 2 FTEs, right? I need 2 developers. So I'll hit fulfill, and that's going to allow me to split this between 2 different developers. So what it does is it puts Adam Barr under this developer row here, and you'll see that it did actually give him the 2 full FTEs of work. And in real time, it updated Adam Barr down here and shows that he's now over-allocated. So that's a problem. I need to get him some help. So what I can do is I can grab Jay. He is available, and I can drag and drop him on top of Adam, and it tries to understand what I'm doing, and it says, do you want to split or replace now? So I could replace Adam with Jay, but that's not going to fix my problem. I want to split the work between the 2 of them. So I hit split. It splits the FTEs between the 2 of them. Now each one of them is doing 1 FTE of work. Adam's a little bit over allocated, but maybe I'm okay with that, or I can try to find someone else to get him some help. And you can see the original request here was for 2 FTEs, and there are 0 remaining. If I was to come in under J, for example, in this month and change that to 0, notice there's now 1 FTE of requirement remaining, so I need to find someone to do that particular work. So you can go back through and you can make changes in specific months if someone's not going to be there or whatever it might be. And this availability here, though, actually does calculate time off. It calculates any other projects that they're working on. This is an availability based on work hours, FTE conversion ratios, holidays. It takes all of that into account to get this remaining availability. So you shouldn't be using anyone who's not forecasted as available for that particular time period. So all of these resources have already been entered into the EPM Live system. They've been associated to a specific holiday schedule and specific work hours, etc. And it's using all that information to generate this remaining availability picture here. So now I need to also find a project manager. I'll select my project manager role, hit match. It finds me an available project manager, and I can drag and drop and fulfill that as well. And that's it. Now the resource manager or the project manager, whoever might do it within your organization, maybe a department manager, whoever it might be, has now successfully staffed this project and said, okay, you needed 2 developers, here they are, and you needed 1 project manager, here he is. And it looks like these people are available. Now, if you were building this plan, you notice that people weren't available, but you were using them anyway, then we have to start making decisions. Are they going to work on project A or project B? So we have another tool that's going to allow us to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this here. And we're going to open up the resource analyzer and start viewing where we have issues and coming up ways to solve those issues using the tool. Issues of overallocation for specific resources or specific roles. So I can select multiple projects here. I'll go ahead and select a large group of projects. Maybe, normally I might select all my proposed projects to see how we're going to handle all those, or maybe all my active projects. I'm going to select a large group here just because so we have some good data to look at within the system, and it'll make more sense. So I'll go ahead and open up the resource analyzer for all of these particular projects. And we'll be able to view where we have problems. If we were to do all of these projects in the proposed time period with the resources that were proposed, what issues are we going to have? Who's going to be overallocated? Who's going to be underallocated? And I can start doing some what-if scenarios to figure out how we can meet the needs and kind of move people around and still get the projects and the work done that we need to get done. So what am I looking at here? In the top, these are all the projects that I selected here. And this is all of the work. It's showing in hours, but again, I can switch at any time. If I didn't want to look at it by hours, I could do it by FTEs or FTE percents. I could switch it just like I did in the resource planner. And showing the amount of hours being asked, for these particular projects in every particular month. In the bottom, it shows me individual resources, and it shows me if they're overallocated or underallocated within a particular time period. And it lights them up red or yellow or green accordingly based on those amount of hours. So I can quickly and easily see, for example, certain people within here, like Mark Kaplan in April, is overallocated, quite a bit overallocated actually. And I can start to make adjustments to fix this. So for example, this external technical readiness training project requires a lot of resources, and maybe it's not as high of a priority of project. What happens if we put it on hold for right now? Does that help us with some of these issues? So I can simply just uncheck this project. And it's going to say, what if we did that? It's not actually changing any data in the system. It's just doing a what-if scenario. So now I can see that it did actually help somewhat in some areas, but I do still have some issues. So that's not the solution. The other thing I notice is here is all of these projects are kind of sitting on top of each other. What would happen if we staggered them a little bit better so that we're not trying to do as many projects all at once? So what I can do is I can simply drag and drop these projects and say I want to move out this Active Directory upgrade 6 months and see what that does. I can click on it, I can drag and I can drop it over here 6 months or so and let go, and then it'll update down in the bottom here to show me what would happen if we were to move that project out 6 months. And you can see that starting to help a little bit as well, but we still have some issues, right? So, as I'm dragging and dropping and unchecking, I can try to get it down to a place where we're going to be able to meet the resource, meet the project's needs with the resources that we have. There's other ways to look at this. There's lots of different ways to look at the data here within the resource analyzer. For example, I'm looking at this by individual resources, but another useful view is by role. So I can hit total column here, and I can say total this by role instead of by resource. So instead of saying if individually, Adam Barr is overallocated, I can see if the developers as a whole are overallocated. So maybe one of the developers is overallocated, but the team as a whole is actually okay. I see a lot of green in here. Maybe we don't have as many problems as we thought we had. We just need to kind of even out the work and reassign some of the work to other people. So what I can do is I can come up with different scenarios in here. Say we come up with 2 or 3 different scenarios. We take that to our steering team and say, hey, here's scenario A, B, and C. Here's the pros and cons of each. Which one do we want to do? Once you figure out which one you want to do, then I can pull that scenario back into my plan here, and I can even hit the publish button. That'll actually go update all of the resource plans with the changes that I made here. So it'll move the start dates and it'll deselect certain projects and those types of things, right? So that I don't have to go back into each resource plan and make those updates manually. If I did want to make smaller changes, like reassigning certain resources, etc., from right here I can launch the resource planner for all of these projects and make those changes, those smaller changes kind of manually as I need to, and then republish those schedules or those resource plans so that they'll repopulate back here. There's other cool things you can do that I'll like to point out, like show details is a really nice view. So I'll go ahead and hit show details here. Instead of grouping by project, and then when I expand each particular project, I can see which resources are being asked to work on that project. A resource manager, a lot of times it helps if they can see, which particular resource is working on which projects. So that's what it does here. It shows me, here's my developers and my database administrators, and these are the projects they're working on, and this is how many hours. So it's just, the same data, but flipping it around by resource or by role in this case. If I switched my total columns back to resource, it would show me which projects each resource was working at. And right, we're looking at this at a really high level of what projects they're working at. We haven't even got down into the project schedule, into tasks and such yet. That would be later on after the project actually started and we started executing, and we can see what work in progress is going on. I can collapse this again so I can get my full view and expand and just go back and forth as needed to see the data I need to see. Maybe I want to throw a quick chart in here so I can see the information a little bit more graphically. I can say show graph, and it builds a dynamic chart showing my total availability of my whole team and how much each role is actually taking up of that. So it looks like overall my whole team is not over allocated at any particular time, but certain groups like support, for example, is over allocated. So maybe we need to hire some more support people to help make up for that, and maybe let go, a few people in other areas where it doesn't make sense, where we don't quite have the demand. It just depends, right? But it's just a tool that gives you the insight and the visibility into that so that you can make those types of choices as needed. Later on, you can even then use the resource analyzer to compare your committed work to like your timesheet actual hours. So we planned this much work, but people actually tracked this much time. So we didn't do a very good job planning. What were those issues? And we can try to do a better job planning later on. Or we could compare, for example, the scheduled work. So meaning the project schedules to the original resource plans and see if they're accurate, how we did on our original resource planning compared to our project schedule. So there's lots of different, types of data and ways you can look at the data within this tool, but it gives you a lot of visibility into what's going on with your resourcing from a capacity and demand perspective. So the resource analyzer is definitely a very useful tool. It has certain uses, but there are other tools with other types of uses. So what I wanted to show real quick as well, I could switch here instead of going at this from a project perspective. I can look at that information all from a resource perspective, which is something that might be very useful for like a resource manager or a department manager. So I can come here and I can see all of my resources, and those same tools, the resource planner and the resource analyzer, I can open them for specific resources instead of for specific projects. So to show you what I mean, let's go ahead first and switch the view here. I'll go to resources by department, let's say, and maybe I'm in charge of the entire software development department. I can select that whole department and I'll hit tools and I'll open up our resource analyzer. And it's the same tool, except for instead of selecting a grouping of projects, I'm selecting a group of resources, and it's going to show me all of those resources and what projects that they're working on, right? So no difference in the tool here. It's just a different way to get into it. It's a different use case, so that I can come at this and see, what are these resources working on instead of what resources are working on these projects. So that could be very useful as well. Then the next step usually after you've built your resource plan is you might use our cost planner to build out a budget, and you can even bring in those labor costs. It'll calculate them for you based on those resources rates. It's a little bit out of scope for our demo today, but you can definitely schedule a demo with us, and I'm sure one of our representatives would be happy to show you how that works. But usually the next step from a resource management perspective then would be to actually build your project schedule. So what I can do is I can grab my project here, and I'll go ahead and just say edit plan. And it's going to give me multiple different options to building my project schedule. I can use an agile waterfall type of, agile iterative type of plan, or I can use a project management waterfall schedule. I can do that in either Microsoft Project, or I can do it in an online project planner, which doesn't require me to install any other applications or have any other licensing or anything like that. There's even a Kanban planner, etc. I'm going to go ahead and select our online project planner. We're going to create a standard waterfall schedule using this tool. The goal of the project planner is to make it quick, easy, simple to create your project schedule. Although it can be a complex schedule, you can definitely create all the different dependencies and save baselines and all the different things that you might want to do within your project schedule can all be done here. Very similarly to like a Microsoft project. The difference is it doesn't have the complex scheduling engine on the back, which to be honest, most people don't even really use a lot of those features. All the core features in Microsoft Project, for the most part, are here and should be pretty familiar to someone who's already familiar with that. If you do want to use Microsoft Project, there are lots of great features in there and ones that aren't in this online planner. You can definitely do that. We have an out-of-the-box integration to Microsoft Project, which allows you to build your schedule in there just like I'm going to do here. So I'll go ahead and create a couple tasks. So I'll create task 1, task 2, and task 3. I can then link up these particular tasks to each other using my link button here. I have all my different linking types, finish to start, finish to finish, etc. I can put in leads, lags, etc. I can assign these tasks to people. Whatever it is that I might want to do, I can do it here, right? Set my start dates, my finish dates, my work. Let's say I think it's going to take 30 hours to do this particular task, etc. Those types of things, right? I can save it and come back to it later if I'm not quite finished and I need to go do something else. And then when I am finished, all I do is I hit publish, and that's going to actually push these tasks into the system, and it's going to start kicking off the workflow. So it's going to notify people that, hey, you've been assigned to this task. It's going to show up in a tool in EPM Live called My Work, which allows a team member to see all of the different work that's assigned to them and various information like due date, % complete, and they can update those things right from within My Work. They can mark tasks as complete when they finish them, which will then generate a notification back to the project manager saying, hey, they finished it, and it'll allow them to update their schedule accordingly. They can either approve or reject that, basically, and it will update the schedule for them. So you can kind of keep going through these iterations on this project schedule of people statusing the work. It comes back into the schedule. I make adjustments in my schedule. I publish it out, those types of things. And I'm going to keep going through that process. But as I'm going through that process, there are a few common problems that arise. One is, someone has been assigned too much work. We planned we used our resource plans to try to make it work, but it wasn't at a very detailed level. So it doesn't always work out that way. Now we need to make adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of my project planner here and show you a few tools and reports that you can use to see where you have issues with actual scheduled work and that you can use to help make adjustments to fix those issues. So we'll go ahead and go back into the resources area here. Now I'm stepping into more of the resource manager type of role, although a project manager could use this tool as well to see what their people, their resources for their project are working on and maybe make some suggestions of changes. But let's say I am the resource manager for a specific department again. So I'm going to switch to my resources by department view here. And I'll open up my software development department. And I'll use tools, and I'm going to open up a tool called the assignment planner. The assignment planner allows me to see all of the work that someone is working on. So instead of just showing me, like in the resource analyzer, the projects that they're working on, that they're planned to be working on anyway, and the amount of time they're planned to be spending on it, this is going to show me the actual work that these people are assigned to, tasks, issues, etc. Show me the actual work and allow me to make adjustments to those individual work items, tasks, issues, backlog items, service requests, whatever it might be. So what I have here is multiple different resources, all the resources that I selected. And then you can see down below, this is their amount of remaining availability. If they're over allocated, which not very many people here are over allocated, you can see there's a little hint of red there. And I can zoom in on that and see all the details, and I can see if people are over allocated. But what I can do is I can look at what someone is working on. So for example here, I have Adam Barr. and he's working on this particular task. It's scheduled to be this long. I can see it in my Gantt chart here, and I can make adjustments to that. Maybe he had 2 tasks that were set to start at the same time. I can move these tasks around a little bit, see how that affects his allocation down here in the window below. So it's a real-time tool that allows me to view and see what everybody's working on, all of their work, including time off, etc. And I can zoom in and zoom out and see if they're over-allocated and make adjustments. But this is all what if again, right? I'm just trying to see if there's a solution to these problems. Once I get it the way I want it, I can then publish that out. And if I move a task in a particular project schedule, it won't just move the task and not tell anybody. It'll notify the project manager and it'll say, hey, this task is being requested to move out a week. If you have appropriate, room in your schedule for that, or, if that won't affect your schedule too much, if that's okay, then you can accept that. Otherwise, you can reject it, maybe send a comment back. There's a full-on commenting capability within EPM Live that's built in that allows you to comment on different tasks. You can see from here, I can make a comment as well and say, hey, is it okay if I move this out? Those types of things. So it's a great tool to one, visualize all of the work that people are working on and make adjustments, as well as then you can use that to communicate back with those project managers as well. There are also reports that are similar to that tool that allow you to view the same information but in more of a report format that you could then send to someone, maybe to a manager or whoever it might be. So I'll show you a few of these different reports real quick. Go into our classic reporting section. There's a report in here called Resource Work versus Capacity, which gives me a very good view of what everyone's working on and lets me drill into that work. And I'll go ahead and open that up here and show you what that looks like. So EPM Live has some really robust reporting capabilities, and it has tons of reports out of the box, including this one. So it's nothing that you would have to build yourself. If you did want to make some, minor adjustments or tweaks to it, those are definitely things that can be done. It's all configurable so that you can, add columns, add filters, change the way things look, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a few resources here. I could select all resources or just one resource, depending on what I'm trying to look at in this report. Then I can pick a scope of work. I can show issues, changes, risks, tasks, etc. So I'll just pick, let's say, tasks and issues are what I'm interested in for this particular report. But as you add in different work types into the system, this will automatically update and show those new work types in there. So if you start tracking backlog items or service requests or whatever it might be, they'll all automatically show up in here so you can start including those in your reports. Then I pick a time period that I want to see this report for. Let's say I want to see a report for the whole year of 2014. Kind of a large time period, but we should be able to generate that report. Excuse me. I can also select how I want to see the report in days and weeks and months or years. Since I selected a large period of time, I'll go ahead and show it in months, just so it's not too overwhelming, too many sections here with all the different data. So now it's going into the reporting database. EPM Live has its own reporting database. It aggregates all that data that we've been working with, right? Those tasks, issues, everything that we've selected here for these particular resources, and it builds the report for me. So the top chart here shows me the total availability of all of these resources. And then I can see in color-coded here which resources are taking up how much of that total availability. And you can see where you have some issues, right? Certain people aren't working as much as others, whatever it might be, or our team as a whole is over allocated if they're over that line, right? You can start to get some good information there. Down below, I can see all the details of these particular resources, and then I can drill into each resource and see exactly what they're working on. So overall, it looks like Adam Barr, for example, in March and April is over allocated. I can zoom into him and see exactly what he's working on in those 2 particular months. So it looks like he's working on about 5 projects. And in this particular project, we can then zoom into that project and drill in one more level and see that he has 3 different tasks that he's assigned and how many hours those tasks are taking him. So we can start to see it looks like the systems implementation task is taking a lot of time in these 2 particular months, and it looks like that's contributing to his overallocation. So we could send this to the appropriate manager, highlight that problem, and try to come up with a way to get that fixed. So how do I do that? I can export this report out to either PDF or Excel or Word or CSV, lots of different options here. I can even subscribe to this report so that it'll send it to me once a week if I want to, or whenever I want it to, once a day, whatever I might need it. And I can even set up an alert so when someone goes into the red, that it'll actually alert me and say, hey, someone's over allocated, and it'll show me the report and I can drill into it and see what's going on. So it's a really powerful reporting tool, and it's a really powerful pre-built report that you can utilize to see what everyone's working on, see where your issues are, and start to get the ball rolling to resolve those issues. There's lots of other reports in here. I can look at my resource plan data. I can look at general project statuses, et cetera, et cetera. There's tons and tons of reports in here for all of the different types of data within the system. And those are all things that are useful to you out of the box when you start using EPM Live. So with that said, there's a full resource management lifecycle here, which you can track and manage within EPM Live. And instead of trying to have everyone have their own Excel spreadsheets and everyone has their own project schedule, it's all within one place. So you have one version of the truth, and you can get these reports, and you can use these analysis tools to see what's going on and do what-if scenarios and make those changes. And at the end of the day, the goal is to make it, so that you protect your number one most valuable resource, your resources, and make sure that you're using them to their maximum potential and getting the most efficiency out of them, which could eventually, save you lots and lots of money and keep your costs lower and make sure that you're getting as much work done and out the door as possible as well, so that you're being effective and having lots of success as a company. So you can see that the tools in here can definitely be useful, and hopefully there are things that you're interested in and you'd like to get more information about. So we have some more information here that we'll present to you if you do want to get more information on how you can try out EPM Live and see if these tools are the right fit for you. So I thank you very, very much for your time, and we'll talk to you again another time.
Thanks, Matt. That was a wonderful demonstration. I think that everyone's got a huge amount out of that, and really thank you for your time today. Everyone, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. That was a real interesting presentation, I think you'll all agree. And what you'll see on the screen now is contact details for EPM Live. You see their website there, their Twitter, as well as their Facebook. And also contact details for Molly Koenke, the Director of Product Marketing. Her email is on the screen as well, so feel free to reach out to her. You'll also notice that at the bottom of the screen there is the PDU number. And that will also be included in the email that is sent afterwards. That's for the Category A PDU, and PMI is just finalizing that right now, so it should be available pretty soon. If not, give it 24 hours or so, and you should be able to claim that through the Category A. There's also the ability to claim a Category C PDU for this if that makes more sense for your individual needs. And again, all the information on that will be included in the email that you receive after this session. So thank you everyone for your time, and have a great day, and we will see you